welcome to the HR Payroll and Finance Town Hall for ConnectCarolina. I am Matt Brody. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for HR, and this gentleman beside me is Kevin Seitz, who is my colleague, Associate Vice Chancellor in Finance. And we're going to both get you started tag teaming today. Let you know a little about our agenda. We'll spend about 10 minutes on a welcome, just kind of give you the, paint the high-level picture. And then we're going to have various experts on the project come and present to you on various topics. Jerry Bland, who's the AVC of Enterprise Applications and ITS, going to talk about the timeline, reporting, and data access. Don Hepp, Senior Director of Finance and HR Applications, also in ITS, is going to go through the next 10 months and will sort of give you a sequence of lots of things and how they're going to play out over the next 10 months between now and go live. Mike Matthews and Colette Wilshire are going to talk about some of their own personal experiences with PeopleSoft. And then Steve Kenny and Vicki Bradley, Steve from the Finance Division, Vicki Bradley from OHR, are going to wrap up, and they're going to each do a little bit of a deeper dive on key points and changes related to this implementation that'll be recurring in finance and HR respectively. And then Kevin and I will come back up and we'll do wrap up and mostly Q&A and just take any questions that you all may have. So that's your program for today. And I'm going to start by saying that today is one in a series of communications and outreach opportunities that will be occurring over the next 10 months. 10 months being key because there's 10 months roughly between now and go live. And some of my ITS colleagues can tell you the number of days, hours, minutes. I'm not quite synced up to that level of detail, but we've got about 10 months to our go live. There will be several town halls. This will not be the only one. And there'll be a variety of communications and outreach activities. So think of this sort of as the kickoff, as you will, to some of the more extended and detailed communications and outreach you'll be getting over the next 10 months. There are about 200 people from across campus actively engaged in the project on our campus working groups. There is probably a working group member and usually multiple from every major school and division in the university. And you will be given a place at the end of the presentation and in your handout where you can identify who those individuals are within your area of responsibility where you work. Those are important contact points and resources for you to ask questions because we've been involving them in a variety of opportunities to get to know what's going on in the project and get to know the system, and will continue over 10 months. So that's a contact point for you within your area, plus you'll be directly invited to opportunities like this. The one thing that we will say, though, is although we're going to bring things to you, we recommend that you be proactive. I mentioned in the first session, and several speakers after me reiterated this point, so it was probably worth saying, this system will have an impact on everyone in this room. If you do finance or you do human resources business at the university, and even further, if either of those is a major part of your job, fundamentally, this thing will impact you. We hope in many, mostly positive ways. Even though some folks will talk about change and getting used to change, we believe for the most part, especially once things are up and running, there'll be positive impacts. But there will be impacts, and I think that's one of the reasons that I would encourage each of you to be proactive in learning more, because that will make your job easier on January 2014. The more you know about what this is, how it's going to work, and how it's going to intersect with your job. And as I mentioned, there are handouts you'll get when you walked in, I guess, and there'll be some out there if you leave, if you didn't get any, that will provide you all the web pages and the emails, etc. So when we mention them in the presentation today, you don't actually have to jot them down. And finally, there is a project website as well as an e-newsletter that you can sign up for. Also good ways to keep up with what's going on in the project. Most of you, if you came here today, probably have some sense of what ConnectCarolina is, but we'll just sort of give you a quick overview to make sure that we crispen up your understanding. ConnectCarolina is an umbrella name for a suite of business applications. It's not just one, but multiple applications that support the administrative enterprise here at UNC Chapel Hill. A big part of that is a vendor off-the-shelf product called PeopleSoft, which I'm sure most of you have also heard of, but that is by no means the only piece. Although PeopleSoft makes up most of Carolina, there are also other internally developed systems and vendor products that also compose that overall suite of solutions that we're calling Connect Carolina. You can see that there's a list of some of the major pieces of Connect Carolina. Campus Solutions, otherwise known as Student Services, is already up and running, and some of you may use that or at least intersect with it in your work. HR and Payroll, as well as Finance, are the two major modules that we're working on now, and most of what you'll hear about today in terms of today's town hall. There are two pieces that really compose the reporting capabilities that we'll be using moving forward, not just for student, but for HR and finance. The sort of infrastructure, the underlying data warehouse is called Enterprise Performance Management, or EPM. The piece that you're most likely to touch and point and click from your desktop when we move to Connect Carolina for HR and finance is the Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition, code word OBIEE for short. And I would probably recommend you just use OBIEE. That is the point-and-click reporting tool that goes against the data warehouse that lets you do a variety of reporting across student, finance, and human resources data. And I think Jerry is probably going to talk, or one of the presenters is going to talk a little bit more about that. There is sort of a centralized access point for all of these applications. It's called a portal. I refer to it as sort of the menu of menus that allow you to get into all the major pieces of the system with your single sign-on. And then finally, a major piece, not just for student, but especially for finance and HR, is document imaging and document management. There are a lot of attachment types of opportunities and even necessities when you're doing HR and finance business, and so there's a whole document management solution that sits in the background to take care of that. One of the other things that we wanted to address today is why are we doing this? And sometimes as these projects go on a long time, one can forget exactly why we're doing it. What really began this process was an outdated student system that was very much urgently in need of being replaced because it was going to fall out of vendor maintenance. It was a third-party product, an old product that was no longer going to be covered by maintenance. At least that's the story they told me. So back in 2009 and 10, they moved to the Connect Carolina PeopleSoft Campus Solutions, or student product, to address that immediate need. But from an HR and payroll and financial perspective, we have a variety of legacy systems in the background. We've listed a few here, some of the older ones, and FRS, the financial system's been in production since 1988. It's 24 years old. That's not real old in people years, but in dog years and IT years, 24 years is pretty old. And so that system really has met its planned usefulness in terms of a shelf life. HRIS, that's 12 years old, back in the year 2000. Not necessarily as old as some of the others, but nevertheless, 12 years is a long time. That was a vendor platform we took over. The vendor's no longer in business, and it's really not all that great an application. So not only based on age, but on functionality, that was really something that we would be delighted to retire and move past. The payroll system is the winner in this contest, 1968, 44 years of age, and Betsy Snipes to be congratulated on keeping it running as long as we've done, and it's paid many, many thousands of UNC employees over the years. And finally, DAS in death, 1997, 15 years. So when you net it all up, for those of you who are better at math than I, you can add the age column. There's a lot of old legacy systems, many of which don't offer us the functionality we need, many of which are beyond their useful life, not really easily updated and enhanced the way we would need. So that's kind of the business case about why we are doing Connect Carolina. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kevin.
This is the time in the presentation when we make sure that none of you are here for Biology 101. Because if you are, this is the time you want to sneak out and not stay, probably. Thank you for being here today. We've been working on this project, some of us longer than others, but certainly for multiple years, and so we're getting very excited that we're getting close to the time when we'll actually be able to go live. Some of the benefits of Connect Carolina, First of all, PeopleSoft is a integrated system. It is going to be very advantageous over time when all the pieces of the puzzle are put together, that the student side and the financial side and the HR payroll side will all be able to speak to each other, and that makes it a lot easier. I know I've been in offices before where you sit down and you ask for some information or a report or whatever, and people are going from system to system picking up pieces of information from different systems. That won't be necessary anymore once we have PeopleSoft implemented. Also, there is standardized data that's going to be across the systems. So that helps us with better reporting. It'll be easier to access the data from multiple uses. And we also are going to be, you'll be hearing a little bit more about some of the powerful tools that are going to be used to provide you the opportunity to be able to get at the data and use the data. Certainly, Matt covered the fact that our technology is a little bit on the aged side. You always have to be careful with numbers and people and ages, because some it may get offended when you start looking at how old the system is. So any of you that are 44, we're not saying you're old, we're just saying the payroll system's old. But certainly the technology has changed in 44 years, there's no doubt about it. You're going to see a much more modern system, a system that with a lot of the bells and whistles that you would expect to have at an institution like this to do your daily work. Also, the technology that's provided will provide us for being able to grow and be able to do some things that we're not doing in the first phase that we'll be able to do in other phases. It'll also allow us to probably come up with some new ideas as we go along that will allow us to, again, to do our work better than what we are able to do it now. So this January 2014 is really our starting point. It's the beginning point. We expect that there will be even more improvements as we go along. Now, one of the things that is always an issue when you start talking about doing an ERP or changing a major administrative system is that word change. People don't like change. It's just natural that most people don't like to change. They're used to what they're doing. They're concerned about what changes are going to occur. What we tried to do, though, is we tried to use, as much as we possibly could, the functionality that was provided in PeopleSoft, the business practices, and the methodologies for processing transactions. We tried to use it as much as we could without changing it. And because if you do change it, if you change the basic codes and you add new parts to the system, then every time you have an enhancement or a change in the system, you have to go back and change that add-on. So we will benefit from the normal upgrades and enhancements that PeopleSoft provides without having to do a lot of additional work on modifications. In other words, we usually like to use the term vanilla. We have the product and implement the product in a vanilla format and not have to make those modifications. And we have been successful in keeping, there are going to be some modifications, but we've been successful in keeping those to a minimum. They add to the time that it takes to build the system and obviously the cost. We're also going to be making changes to our business processes. Those that have already worked with the student system know that things are done differently now than they have been in the past. And it's, or if you've used e-procurement, you know how different that system is from the old procurement systems. This is the technology, the modern technology that's being used, and again, it's one of the benefits for our making this change. In PeopleSoft, there is a certain amount of complexity that you may not have found in some of the older systems. A lot of post-audit work, a lot of situations where you actually can send information to people when transactions are being processed to let them know that transactions are going through email and whatnot. There is workflow that is involved, but it's different than, for example, the workflow in Fred. It's going to be more streamlined and standardized than what we've had in the past. But it is going to require, it is a complex system, but with the complexity comes more opportunities. Opportunities to be able to gather data easier, be able to process transactions in a faster way, to be able to, hopefully, in some cases, be able to, with the chart field string, the way it's been set up, to allow campus departments to be able to take some of the information you may be keeping in spreadsheets now or departmental systems and be able to get that information right out of PeopleSoft. As we go on and get closer and closer to go live, you're going to find that more and more of the central business office folks are involved in the project and will get involved in testing, in doing other aspects of the project. Right now, we have a good number of campus and central business folks working on the system, but closer to go live, the more people are needed to be able to do the final work and preparation to actually implement the system. So you may find that in some cases, you may find that when you're calling the business offices and you were able to get someone on the line right away or in a very short time get a response, those response times may lengthen a bit. We ask you to please bear with us. Folks are trying to do the very best that they can, but they will be very, very busy at that time. We are hiring some extra people to help us during that time frame, and we're going to have certainly staff that have been working as SMEs or BAs on the project. They'll also be involved, but you are going to find that things may slow down a little bit when you get as we get closer to go live, as far as our ability to be able to respond to you immediately. Finally, this is going to be a tremendous change to the university. Obviously, I've only been here for 2 years, so I haven't seen some of the system work that's been done, but having been at other schools, I know that when you go through this process, it is one that can kind of upset your apple cart in the beginning. But what I also find is that after you've gotten through training and after you've gone live and you've started processing transactions or start getting used to the new system, you're going to find that you'll find all the positive benefits of the new system, and in particular, we'll find shortcuts on how to do things easier, and you're going to start coming up with ideas. Wow, can the system do this? Or is there a way for me to tweak this and do that? It's just a natural phenomenon that I've seen with the other 2 ERPs that we've implemented. So there will be change. It's change, though, that I think everyone, if you can embrace the change and work with it, get yourself prepared, learn as much about the new system as you can. We'll be showing you some places that you can get additional information. I think in the long run, you'll find that the transition to the new system won't be nearly as bad as maybe some people would like to tell you. We are doing everything we can to plan and make that as easy of a transition as possible. I'd like to turn it over to Jerry. Jerry's going to be talking about reporting and a couple other aspects of the project.
Thank you. Good afternoon. You've probably been to one or more of our other town halls or training, and you're probably aware that both of these systems are going live at the same time, January 2014. To reiterate what Kevin and Matt have already said, that is significant change. Everything that we know today is changing for HR and Finance January 2014. In addition to the 200 work group members that are working with the project, we probably have about 100 people who are sitting in ITS management, all of whom are invested in making sure that the project is right, that we're making the right decisions, that the system is being configured accurately. So we have a lot of people who are working to make sure that January 2014 is successful. One of our key lessons learned from Campus Solutions was to make sure that we have reporting ready on day one. It's one of the things that we did not do well with Campus Solutions, but we have made a commitment to our sponsors that for these 2 projects, we will not go live if we do not have reporting ready. So we have a concerted effort looking at reporting, looking at the delivered reports that come with PeopleSoft. We're looking at our data warehouse. We are implementing a new data warehouse. So the 2 warehouses that you are working with today, the legacy FRS warehouse as well as the HRIS warehouse, are going away. They will be replaced by a PeopleSoft warehouse. We will be implementing OBIEE, which is the reporting tool that is delivered with PeopleSoft. We hope it will be a user-friendly tool that will allow people to create their own reports. If you're technically savvy, you will be able to create dashboards, pretty colors, nice charts, that sort of information with that tool set. Additionally, for those who are interested, you may have access to PeopleSoft Query. If you've used that with Campus Solutions, that same tool is available with HR and Finance. Campus Solutions reports. I hope some of you have been able to look at some of the reports that have been delivered. The Campus Solutions warehouse went live in November. It currently houses registration information for students across campus. It will soon hold admissions, financial aid, as well as campus community information. And we hope in the next month or so that we will roll out super user access so that individuals can start creating their own reports and not have to rely on the registrar or ITS to create those reports. Again, we are actively looking at the reporting process for HR and Finance. We do have a work group that is focused on reporting. You will see some information at the end of the slideshow, but if you are interested in making sure that you are aware of what's going on with reporting, make sure you know who your representative is on the reporting work groups. They're actively looking at the delivered reports and trying to figure out what's going to work for us, what is not going to work for us, what's missing that we may need to build, or what might be available that we can create in OBIEE. So there are a large number of people who are focused on reporting and making sure that we have access to data in January. Departmental systems. Of course, with everything changing, that means not only do the systems that ITS is supporting need to change, but our departmental systems need to change as well. So if you are an InfoCorp user, if you are an IT Works user, those systems need to change. Our chart of account is changing, so there are some technical changes that need to occur in those departmental systems. I strongly, strongly encourage that if you have not talked to your technical staff, that you please do so. We have an application collaborative that meets basically monthly. And I've actually been surprised at how few people are showing up at that meeting. So it's a little concerning that we don't have more technical people concerned about the changes that are coming and asking questions. So I really do encourage you to go back to your offices and make sure that the technical staff that are supporting your departmental systems understand what is going on, and if they have questions, to please contact us so that we can make sure that they're keeping pace. We do not want on January 1 that conversations between systems break. We don't want that to happen. So we want to make sure that everybody is moving with us, that the changes are occurring on time, that when we get to testing this summer, all systems are ready and to test and make sure that they are able to receive any data from PeopleSoft. So please keep that in mind as you go back to your offices. Now Don will come forward and talk a little bit about what the project is going to be doing in the next 10 months to get us to January.
Okay, the project timeline is up above here. It shows the 5 phases of the project. So as you can see, the red line, kind of on the left side down the middle, tells you we're doing a lot of things right now all at once. So we'll get into a little more detail on the phases momentarily. You can see that we're doing requirements, design, development, and testing all at one time. Gets a little bit confusing. Certainly a lot of work to go around, but a lot of important work happening pretty much as we speak. You'll see it, if you can make it out on the chart, there's a little kind of crosshatch section on the first 3 phases, the little dots in them. That kind of shows where the reporting related work is happening in those phases. So right now, for example, we're done with requirements, save for the reporting piece. Thus, it's always at the end, that work lags the rest. Another thing that's important to note is the fact that you can see the one big phase, testing, goes out throughout almost the whole slide here. That's how important it is. It goes for roughly 15, 16 months on this slide alone. Where the other phases kind of end prematurely, that keeps going and going and going. Let me talk a little bit about each of these, give you some context of where we've been and where we're going. As I mentioned, requirements, pretty much done. except for reporting. But how did we get there? What do we do to lock down those requirements? Well, we started with the business analysts, the subject matter experts that are assigned to the project every day. They did the best job they could of representing what UNC does today and what we'll need to do going forward. They didn't try to say it has to be done the same way, because we have to use the delivered PeopleSoft product to try to meet those requirements. But they did make sure we knew what we did today, what we need to do to meet payroll and do other important business functions here at UNC. Then we didn't stop there. We went one layer further. We met with business owners and gave them some input, make sure they felt that the critical things we need to do as a university can be done. And then after that, we went to a lot of your peers who are part of these 200 or so people at these campus working groups for HR, Payroll, and Finance. And they looked at the requirements. In some cases, they asked questions, they added requirements, they added some context to requirements. So we had the best possible feel for what we need to do in PeopleSoft to meet the university's needs. So at that point, we can move into the next phase of the project, which is design. Design is simply taking the requirements and designing a solution for them. Again, using PeopleSoft most of the time. So we have two pieces of design. We can design the actual use of PeopleSoft, that's the software we purchased, and we configure the PeopleSoft solution to do that. Kind of just setting switches, just we're going to use this page or that page, how we're going to use it, what fields we'll use, things like that. And then there's the design of the pieces we need around PeopleSoft to make the whole project successful. An example could be a selected group of modifications to PeopleSoft or additional screens that we need because we live in the state of North Carolina and governed by some of those laws. Or GA has certain needs for how we have to govern our institution along with the other state system institutions. Because PeopleSoft won't solve for that. They will not have specific code for how North Carolina needs us to operate. And a few other things that might be specific to UNC and how we need to operate. And other things we need to go live are things like conversions. We need to get our old data, some of our old data, into the new system so when we turn on the lights next January, we have data in there. So it knows we've done have biz. It has a record for me. It has our year-end balances, it has our month-end balances, things along that. It knows who our vendors are. Okay, so we have to write programs for that too, so we design those. You get the idea. There's workflow, we do design for that, and later reports. And development just naturally flows after that. So we design it, then we make it happen. We create the screening, we create the program that converts the data, and so that they're very much linked. And all these things happen together. We could be designing one thing and developing it before we even design another piece. We go as fast as we can to get it done. So once we get to testing, there's a lot of stuff happening there, as evidenced by how long that bar is. That testing bar started last September. So September 2012, it's going to go right through December of 2013. There's 7 or 8 different phases involved in testing. They don't all have to happen in serial fashion, which is lovely. There's a lot of things that can happen by themselves. Examples of that might be, we're going to run payroll parallel tests, so to make sure that all of our paychecks are accurate in the new system versus the old system. But we are going to do certain things that do have to happen in serial fashion. So we start small. It's a complete process end to end, but we start small. We test the little piece parts, that one new screen we built, make sure that looks right. And then we keep building and building until we know that all finance works together. And then later finance and HR work together, and later finance and HR work together, but they can send that file we need going out to the bank. We can pull data in from another source. We can feed Campus Solutions, which of course is already live. We can send data to the reporting structure. So it needs to all work together. So of course over the spring, summer, and into the late fall, we'll test all that. And it just increasing levels of complexity. As we check the little parts, we know they work. We check them with other parts to make sure they work together and together and together. And so that's what a great deal of our effort will be is in the testing area now through go live. Okay? We track every single bug that we run across to make sure that we can run reports and we know that it's going to resolve. It's very important because in a project of this size, you can easily see how things could get lost. We can't afford that to happen. So once someone logs a bug, it has to be managed and tracked until it's resolved or we decide it doesn't really matter. It could be somebody reported above, but it's really a request for an enhancement we'll look at some other time, but not for this go around. But it has to be adjudicated. And the last thing we test here is we do also test the performance of the system. So we want to test, can the system hold up under pressure? You know, if a lot of you folks are on the system at the same time, you and your paycheck on Monday morning, after the paycheck came in, can the system handle that? Or it's going to take 10 minutes for it to render. So we check all that stuff. Will it paint fast enough? You get at the end of the key, get your response back in a fast enough time to do your job. Okay, a couple more slides. One key phase, and it happens to be at the end of the project for testing, is something called user acceptance testing, abbreviated UAT. This is a phase where Matt and Kevin will represent the customer on the project, where you all tell us collectively whether we're ready to go live or not. We anticipate we will be, but we don't know until we really finish testing. So we're hoping by the end of November, we'll know that decision. And if we have an outlier or two, it'll give us a few weeks in December to fix that before we go live. So that would be the plan. And a lot of you, or your peers, will have representation in that decision whether we're ready to go live. We'll have people testing, probably 30, 40 people on each project, testing with us on the core project team to make sure everything works. They test different business scenarios and permutations of those scenarios in the new solution. Okay? And lastly, but certainly not least, is what happens in deployment. So that's the last phase. So it's easy to say, yeah, that's when go live happens, but there's so much more to it than that. So there's the training activity in advance of deployment, which is starts in October. So October, November, December, January. The real heavy activity probably happening in December, probably post-Thanksgiving towards the middle of January. But there'll be certainly a lot of activity happening before and after that. Okay? There'll be all sorts of different ways we deliver training. Classroom training, CBT type training. We'll certainly be creating job aids for you to have available after we're live, so you feel like you don't just go to training, you have help afterwards. There'll be things we do the first 30, 60 days we're live to give you the ability to get help. Not just call a phone number, but go somewhere and get help. Have someone located near you help you with those initial, I'll say, first user jitters, where, oh gosh, I'm going to click enter here and I hope I did it right. Because that's going to happen to all of us, so we know that, we're going to be proactive. Okay, and last thing on this is there's going to be so much more information to come on this as we get final with our training plans. We'll be sharing a lot of information, whether it's another town hall, whether it's other communications. Certainly be on the lookout for what we're doing and when, and take advantage of all the information we provide. So thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike Matthews.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Matthews. I'm the EPA Personnel Manager with the UNC School of Medicine. But for the last 2 years, I've been assigned full-time to the PeopleSoft project. So I'm one of the subject matter experts that Don alluded to. Working with me on the project are several professional PeopleSoft consultants with years of expertise in the PeopleSoft product, both in functional and technical areas, along with many other university employees who've been assigned to the project either full-time or part-time. So as we've been able to see on the slides, it's a large undertaking, but the university administration has taken great efforts to make the resources available for this to be a successful project. So they're to be commended for that. Regarding PeopleSoft, I don't have a background in PeopleSoft. I picked it up while working on the project. So for those of you who work with HR, I'd like to give you maybe some examples of some elements of PeopleSoft that you may find helpful in your day-to-day operational activities in processing HR. PeopleSoft gives us 3 different statuses, for example, for an employee. There's a HR status, a benefits status, and a payroll status. You'll come to appreciate this. In our current system, everything's based off payroll. So for example, if you have an employee who's on leave without pay, the payroll status is inactive, we find it's difficult. Generally, you can't process HR actions on that employee without first bringing them back into an active status making a change you need to make in the HR system, and then putting them back in an unpaid status, hopefully before the next payroll runs. Now, depending on your timing, this can get a little exciting, maybe a little too exciting for what you bargained for. Because PeopleSoft gives us 3 different statuses for each employee. If an employee is on leave without pay, for example, their payroll status is inactive, but their HR status remains active. This allows you to continue processing actions on them if you need to. For example, if you had a fixed-term faculty member who needed to be reappointed during the time they were on leave without pay, PeopleSoft allows you to go in, simply perform the HR transaction, and not disturb payroll status. Another feature of PeopleSoft is here at the university, we've got in the university's mission 3 objectives. We have teaching, we have research, and we have public service. And we use different populations to help support that mission. The population we're probably most familiar with are employees. PeopleSoft gives us a relationship of employee. These are the folks who work directly for the university. We pay them through our payroll. They may be eligible to participate in our benefit plans. And in PeopleSoft, we can group all these people together as employees. But PeopleSoft doesn't stop there. PeopleSoft knows you often get resources from other populations. They have a second group of people, known as PeopleSoft Speak, as it's called, contingent workers. Now, a contingent worker can be managed through PeopleSoft as well, but these are folks we don't pay directly. These are people who work with us, but are often paid by third parties. An example would be perhaps a temporary who comes in from an outside agency. Contractors, such as we work with on the project, who come to us from a central agency. Or for those of us who work in areas that have large outreach programs, we often partner with professionals across the state, such as the Area Health Education Centers or the Institute for Government. And these people often we have to give them university-type jobs, such as adjunct faculty appointments. Those folks can be managed in the contingency worker population through PeopleSoft. And then PeopleSoft gives us one more option. It's called a person of interest, which is not as nefarious as it sounds. It simply means you're someone who needs to be active in the system, to whom we may elect to provide university resources such as building access, access to an email account or other IT services, for whom we keep just a minimum amount of biographical demographics on. You've heard a lot of talk about reporting opportunities in PeopleSoft. I work very closely with faculty. Just 2 more quick examples. PeopleSoft gives us an opportunity to better track faculty retention efforts. The identifying, attracting, and retaining faculty is always given as a top priority here at the university. Right now, primarily we track faculty retention through those we keep through salary changes or those who terminate to go work somewhere else. PeopleSoft gives us a way to track additional faculty retention efforts. Perhaps the department has agreed to allow additional lab space to a researcher. Perhaps the dean's office has agreed to provide additional administrative support for a program. All these are faculty retention efforts that we can better track and date in PeopleSoft, and they're all reportable. One more example is faculty mentoring of our junior faculty. How many of our junior faculty obtain tenure? How long have they spent in the tenure track to get to that point? In which areas do we seem not to be able to help them achieve that goal? Again, in PeopleSoft, we have very specific areas we can track these activities to identify those programs that perform really well and maybe identify those that need a little more help. So overall, we are in our last year before go live. We appreciate all the help we've gotten from departments to date as we've worked to implement this. We're going to ask for some more help. Working together, we can all help to make this a successful implementation. And now I believe Colette has a few comments. He's actually worked with PeopleSoft.
I'm Colette Wilshire. I am currently the interim director for the business center at the college. And I'm here today to tell you that it's all going to be okay. I've had the opportunity, or curse, I'm not sure which it is, to go through 2 different PeopleSoft implementations at 2 other universities. So, like with all change, it's difficult. There's a lot of learning involved. There's a lot of training involved. But everybody out here, you're all smart enough to do it. You can all get through it. And there's a bunch of things that you're really going to love in PeopleSoft. And you just have to get over that hump of moving from the old systems to the new system. One of the things that I find is so much better in PeopleSoft than the environment that we're in here now, I don't know about you, but I have 2 monitors. Most days, I wish I had 4 monitors because I've got HRIS open and I've got EPA Web open and Financier and FRS, and I'm constantly having to go to all of these different systems to retrieve the information that I need to do my job. And once we move to PeopleSoft, everything is in there together. It's so much easier to just get around in there, be able to drill down and find something. Wouldn't it be nice if you were in Financier and you saw an FB number, if you could just drill down that FB number and see what it is, rather than having to open FRS and find the FB number and open it up. So all of those things make your life a lot easier. It's a lot faster to get things done. The recording is far more robust than anything that we have here. The ability to have finance and HR and student all talk to one another, again, it cuts down on the time that you have to spend looking for, researching information that you have to sometimes pick up the phone and call somebody to get, rather than just being able to get it in one system. And even though everybody's going to have to learn how to use a new system, at least we don't have to learn how to use one more system. Maybe 2, you can't go that either. Right now, to do your job, if you're a department manager, you have to know how to use all those things. You have to know how to use HRIS and EPA Web and Financier and FRS and get into Finance Central. So one of the things that's a benefit after you learn how to use the system is that you're just in there and all of the screens are very similar. The tabs are very similar. There's little breadcrumbs at the top of the screen to follow back and forth if you get lost. So the overall system is just a lot better. Everything that you get out of it as far as reporting is vastly better than what we have now. And at some point, instead of trying to hang on to those legacy systems, you're going to be waving goodbye and being okay to see them go. So just know, after you get through dealing with it's coming, you can't stop it, learning about it, getting trained properly, and moving on. Like our consultants tell us all the time. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. Don't worry. I think next I'm going to pass it off to Steve, and he's going to give you a little bit more information about the finance side.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Kenny. Many of you may know me as the insurance guy. I'm actually wearing a little different hat these days. I've been helping out with the implementation of the finance module. I'm doing it on a time-limited basis. At some point after we go live, I will return to my old responsibilities in Treasury and Risk Management Services, and I'll be a campus user of this product just like all of y'all, just like Colette and just like Mike. But I have had the advantage of working with the team for the past year and seeing a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. And I can tell you that there are literally hundreds of people that are working on this full time for a successful implementation to try to make it as seamless as possible for you. But one point I do want to make is that this is very real and this is going to affect all of us. If you're sitting up there and thinking, no, this isn't going to affect me, or hey, I'm going to opt out of this and I'm just going to stay in my old system or my old box, it's not going to work that way. But I say that in a positive way because this really is a pretty slick system. Having a sneak preview of it, the 2 things that I like about it, and it's similar to what Colette said, is the screens, the functionality of the screens and the format. Just more consistent with what you might expect today. Point and click functionality, it's web-based, got drop-down boxes, search engines, just what you would expect in the year 2013. All of this information is right there at your fingertips. You've essentially got a dashboard in front of you. You're not going to have to be bouncing in and out of different systems. You're not going to have to cobble reports together. It's all going to be right there for you. Those are the 2 things that I like about it. There's a lot of other enhancements, but those are 2 big ones for me. So, If you have some type of finance responsibility at your department, if you work in FRS or you're responsible for budgeting, procuring goods and services, contracts and grants, paying bills, billing people, reporting, you're going to see a difference come January. You're going to be working with some type of PeopleSoft product. That is the vendor, as we mentioned earlier. The finance modules that we bought from PeopleSoft are listed above. Our guiding principle in deciding what we were going to use is we looked at the PeopleSoft vendor, and if what they could deliver essentially out of the box, I think vanilla is the term, if they could meet our needs, if there was a fit there, we're going to go with the PeopleSoft product, and we're going to decommission or sunset the old finance product. If it didn't meet our needs right out of the box, we would look at it and do some type of gap analysis, do a cost benefit on it. What do we have to do to configure this to make it work for our needs? And then we just did that way of the cost and balance. And then finally, there are some systems that PeopleSoft just would not satisfy for us. And in those systems, we are going to continue with those legacy systems. We're a unique animal, being part of the state. We have certain requirements that a commercial product just can't satisfy for us. I don't think there's any product out there that can meet all of our needs. So what we've done is we've tried to utilize what we could with PeopleSoft, but also recognize that some systems have to stay. So if you are using FRS, it's going to go away. There's going to be no more green screens. We're moving into the 21st century here. Some of the legacy systems, web travel, central airline billing, P-card, there's a number of other systems that are going to stay around. Without going over each one of them, we do have a pretty comprehensive list for you. I know the list is out on the finance training website. I know it's at least out there, so I would refer you to that if you want to get a good idea of what exactly is staying and what is going as far as the finance systems. E-procurement, we're already up and running on ePro. We're just going to move to a new version come January. Should be a seamless transition from your perspective. Couple key points about the finance module. I want to talk a little bit about the chart field. I think y'all are probably already familiar with this. We had a town hall last year. We did a bucket presentation, kind of introduced you to the new chart fields. There's a takeaway document solely dedicated to the new chart fields and giving an explanation of each one. Basically, the idea behind this is, if you recall, in FRS, you basically just have two dimensions to work with. You've got an account, you've got an object code. And those two dimensions don't necessarily work for everyone. They may have worked decades ago, but most of you have some very unique reporting needs. And as a result, you've been kind of pushed out and having to use your own type of departmental systems to track a lot of your reporting or finance needs. What we've done is we've redesigned this chart field to try to take advantage of that. Hopefully, what we've done here will assist you in replacing your side system. The chart field structure that we came up with was not done in a vacuum. It was vetted by campus. It was vetted by central office. It will also include the needs of our foundations. We've got 20-some foundations on campus. They also use our finance systems. I know that there's some foundation representatives in the audience today, and they will also be brought into the fold on this project. Because we are making the chart field more dynamic, there's certainly going to be some changes. One of the big ones is department numbering, for example. It's going to go from 4 to 6 digits. You're going to have to learn some new terminology. These are not big deals. These are not deal breakers. The benefit in return really outweighs any type of change you may be concerned about. But just keep in mind that there will be some changes there. This is our chart field string. We like to refer to this as the perfect slide. It does change. It's been changing for the better. At the last town hall we had, it looked a little bit different. We've added a few things to it. There's a lot of information on this slide. I'm not going to go into detail on every particular chart field, but I do want to make a couple comments about it. We tried to build this with everyone's interests in mind. If you look at it, it's basically broken down into 3 blocks, and the top half of it, you have the 5 required chart fields that are going to be required on every transaction that you all will put in the system. I like to think of these particular chart fields as satisfying central office's needs and our provost needs. We have to provide information to the state on a monthly basis. We have to produce an annual report just like any other organization. We have accrediting agencies. We have rating agencies that want to look at our information. We have to balance our books. I mean, that's just a fundamental piece of accounting. We have to make sure that our debits and credits line up. And this piece of the chart field helps us accomplish that. That's what I like to think of as the central office's piece of the chart field. In the lower left-hand corner are the 3 parts of the chart field relating to contracts, grants, and capital improvements. They are a little bit of a different animal. For most of us dealing with accounting, we tend to operate on fiscal years. We tend to do things annually. We run from July to July. We close our books out and we open new books. Contracts and grants, capital improvements are a little bit different because they may expand over more than 1 year. We don't necessarily always know when that ending date may be. So they need their own piece of the chart field to satisfy their needs and satisfy their reporting requirements. And they have it right there in those 3 pieces. And in the right side, the bottom right side, these are the optional chart fields. This is your real estate. This is your area. These are the chart fields that we hope you will use, and again, it's optional, but these are the chart fields that we hope will help you replace any type of side system you may be forced to use right now just because FRS is not satisfying your needs. Again, these are completely optional. You may have some type of specific needs in your department. You may want to report on a particular scholarship or professorship. You may be an auxiliary type unit, operates off your own revenues, may need to track certain information. This is your area of the chart field that you have to use to your benefit. And as we mentioned earlier, January 1st is really just a starting point on all of this. Even on the team, you know, there's a tremendous learning curve with this, and we're realizing how powerful this system is. So I think once you get into it and start cutting your teeth on it, I think you're going to find that you can really put these optional chart fields to work for your particular use. And finally, just want to leave you with a couple final words, with the theme being more. As a result of this new ConnectCarolina implementation, you're going to have a lot more authority, a lot more responsibility. Things are going to be pushed out to you. That's a good thing. You have a lot of autonomy with this system. And again, this January 1st is a starting point. There's a number of other modules that PeopleSoft offers that we're not necessarily going live with, but they're certainly available for your use down the road. You're also going to have a lot more responsibility when it comes to budgeting. There's a piece in PeopleSoft, they refer to it as commitment control, and it gives you a lot more flexibility on how you want to budget things. Again, using those optional cost code areas, you may want to budget on a particular piece of your department. You may want to budget on a program or a startup, a professorship. Between having that optional cost code and the functionality, the budgeting functionality that's provided, you'll be able to have a lot more flexibility in that regard. And then finally, again, just the data's at your fingertips. It's all in this system. The chart field string is really the thread. It's the DNA, I like to think of the system that goes throughout all the different modules. And because of that, you're able to pull all that data in, whether you're in the finance module or whether you're in the human resource module that Vicki's going to talk about. Wherever you're in, that chart field string, because it's consistent, you're going to be the ones entering that data in, but all that information is right there literally at your fingertips. And it's in real time, so it's if your dean or your boss wants you to pull up a report, you're going to be able to pull that up in real time. So that's a very high-level explanation of where we are with the finance module. I'm going to have Vicki talk about the HR piece, which is equally big and as important as our piece.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vicki Bradley. I'm a Senior Director in Human Resources, and I've been working for the past several years on the ConnectCarolina project. And I'm excited to be here today. We're at that point where we can start talking about the activities for the last year before we go live in 2014. And lots of good, exciting things happening. I want to share with you a little bit about what's going on the HR side of the project and some of the key activities that we've been going through and some of the changes that you'll be seeing there. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about the HR payroll modules. We have several different modules that we're going to be implementing on the HR side. The first is workforce administration, and that is really the core HR area. That's where we have the things that we normally do related to position management and employment are done in workforce admin. That's when you hire your employees, you put their job data or their position data. We have another few modules as well. We have a benefits module and the payroll module, and both of those are extremely important, obviously, because we want to make sure that we get everyone's benefits right. We want to make sure that we get people paid appropriately come go live. So those are two modules that we have a lot of attention focused on. There's another module called commitment accounting in HR, which is really where all the data entry is done on the salary sources. So when an employee is hired, they say what contractor brand or what state fund they're paid from. All of that is done actually in HR, but we really just have the data entry done on the HR side of the project. All the rules related to the different funds and encumbrances and all that kind of stuff is set and determined by the finance folks, whether it's the budget office folks or the individuals in sponsored research. So in HR, while it's done in the HR module, the decisions are really made on the finance side of the project. So we work jointly on that module, and we have folks from both the HR side and the finance side working on commitment accounting. We have another module in HR called faculty events, and that's where we have some very specific things for faculty. In most of the rest of PeopleSoft, kind of in the old days with HRIS, you had SBA actions and EPA Web was designed for EPA employees. And in PeopleSoft, all of the employees will be in PeopleSoft, and you'll have to know how to take an action, whether you can do it on an EPA employee or an SBA employee, because all of them will be in there together. But the one kind of exception is there's a module off to the side where there are things that just relate to faculty, where you can track the faculty tenure review process and all of that. So the faculty events module is the one area where there are faculty-specific things to do. And then the last one, you may not even be thinking about training, but in our current systems, for HR training, when employees sign up for training, that's actually done, the enrollment and the management of the classes is done through HRIS. So once HRIS goes away, we need to have the capability to offer training classes, HR training classes and EEO training classes. We need a way to be able to manage the enrollments and manage the coordination of all of that. So there is a module in HR that allows us to do that as well. So that's another piece that we're looking at. So those are the different modules that we're going to be implementing on the HR side. And so what are the systems that are going away? Well, we'll no longer be using HRIS, EPA Web, or Payroll, kind of the biggies. There's also a back office benefits web system, which we had designed several years ago that helps benefits folks administer the benefits and make sure that we have the rules programmed in and stuff to help them. That system will go away. And also HR Central will no longer be necessary once we're in PeopleSoft, nor will the HR Data Warehouse. Now, so that means the HR Data Warehouse, the one that we know and use today, will no longer be in existence. But we'll have a new data warehouse that we'll be able to use in PeopleSoft. So we'll still have that kind of functionality. It will just be a different data warehouse. So we talked about what systems are leaving, and there are a few systems that we've decided to keep. First of all, Tim, Kronos, we've decided that we really didn't need to kind of bite off having a whole new time information system for us. So we decided to keep Kronos, at least for go live and until whenever it would be reassessed at some point. But we decided to retain Tim and make sure that we keep that functioning once we get into PeopleSoft. The other system that we're going to be looking at, the other system that we looked at, is People Admin. And we decided way back when we first started planning for PeopleSoft, there is a recruitment module in PeopleSoft, and we looked at it with a whole lot of interest, and we thought, well, this might be something that we could use to replace Recruitment Web. And we looked at the functionality in PeopleSoft, and we looked at People Admin, which is used by the other universities in the system and a whole lot of other higher ed institutions, and we compared the functionality in PeopleSoft and People Admin and said, People Admin really is built for higher ed. It's got a lot of functionality that we wanted. And so from just a functionality standpoint, we thought it would make sense for us to use People Admin. And we also thought it would be really nice to kind of carve out that piece of it and put recruitment behind us so that we weren't trying to have a whole new applicant system and recruitment system at the same time. We're trying to bring up payroll and benefits. So we made the decision to go ahead and use People Admin and get that implemented and get that under our belt before we were going live with payroll and benefits. So People Admin has been rolled out during the course of the last year. It will be ending in March, where SK employees will be handled via People Admin. So we're glad to have that one kind of behind us. So those are the two systems, the two HR systems, HR payroll systems, I should say, because Tim was really kind of payroll. But those are the two HR payroll systems that will continue with us when we go live. So I want to talk now about some of the key points, some of the changes that are going to be going on when we go live with PeopleSoft. And in the HR side of the project, one of the largest changes that we have is with our user access model. PeopleSoft is a very complicated tool, has a whole lot of functionality, and it's a very neat tool, but it is more complicated than the tools that we have now. Right now, if you use EPA Web, it's designed with all of our bells and whistles and the rules from GA and everybody designed in it. Well, PeopleSoft is a tool that's designed to be used by all different kinds of industries all around the world. It doesn't have our unique little rules for the state or for GA programmed into it. And so users really have to know what they're doing in PeopleSoft and know what actions they can take and how to make things work for all of our different employee types. So it is complicated, and we want to make sure that people who are using PeopleSoft really use it enough so that they're comfortable with it and they know how to do transactions in it. We have right now a whole lot of users that touch the system maybe a couple times a year. They may do 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 transactions a year. And if that happens when they're using PeopleSoft, if they wait a whole year to do a transaction, they're not going to remember how to do it. So what we looked at was, let's make sure that the people who are using PeopleSoft actually do enough volume so that they're comfortable with it, they remember how to do it, they're familiar with it, so that we won't have errors and we'll have good data and we won't have problems in HR. So we also have a whole lot of employees right now that spend a little bit of time on HR, maybe 5% of their time is devoted to HR while they're doing a whole lot of other stuff. So we wanted to make sure that going forward, we have people who are truly devoted to HR, spend the majority of the time on HR, so they know how to handle HR needs, they know how to answer questions for folks that they're supporting. So we've decided to kind of narrow the number of people that will be using PeopleSoft or in HR roles, but make sure that those people are more proficient and are spending more of their time actually doing HR. So we have a better level of customer service across the university. So what we've done is we've said, for the complicated transactions, we're going to limit the number of people who can get in and handle the complicated transactions. But for the high volume, simple transactions, we've not limited that. So we've talked with the schools and divisions and told them how many users they're allowed to have to do the complicated transactions. And I'll talk a little bit about the distinction between the complex transactions and the simple. The simple transactions are free. We have lump sum payments, salary source changes, and student actions. And we have not limited the number of people that can do those three high volume, more simple transactions. So schools and divisions can have lots of people doing that, maybe even some people who aren't even HR. Maybe some finance people would be doing the salary source changes or whatever. But the rest of the transactions, when it comes to hiring an employee or establishing positions or giving salary increases or whatever, those are more complex transactions, and we've limited the number of people who will be able to do those in the system going forward. So that is a fairly large change on the HR side of the project, and one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention today. Some other key points, some other major decisions that we made along the way. We did take a look at the payroll cycles and looked at several different options for payrolls, how we were going to do our payrolls going forward. And we decided that we would maintain our existing payroll cycles for a variety of reasons, but I wanted to let you know that decision has been made, that we are staying on the same pay cycles. Another change, and Steve already mentioned this, talking about the department number changing. That's just one of the chart field string that he showed you. But departments today are 4-digit, as he mentioned, and will be going to 6 digits. So while that decision was made on the finance side of the project, and they've developed the structure of departments on the finance side of the project, it certainly affects us on the HR side as well. Because now we're going through the exercise where we're working with the schools and divisions to go in and take all of the employees and map them to the new departments. So if you have a lot of employees who are in one department, and that department has now been broken out into sub-departments, we're asking the schools and divisions to go in and say what employees are going to what sub-departments or what new departments that have been created. So that's something that we're working jointly on with finance again, and that's a fairly major change and something that impacts us on the HR side as well. Another major decision for us was with relation to position management. The system is designed in such a way where you either turn on full position management or you don't. And depending on that decision, it has all kinds of other implications throughout the HR module. So we spent quite a bit of time determining whether or not we wanted to use full position management at the university. And our decision was that we would go forward with partial position management. If we went with full, that meant for every employee, they would have to have a position, and the system would require it. And by going with partial position management, the system won't require a position for every employee, but we will have business rules that say which employees must have positions. And we'll do as we're doing today, which is saying that SPA employees will have positions, EPA non-faculty employees must have positions, but faculty will not. It was just determined that it would be too administratively burdensome to have positions for faculty members. So, and we're not going to be requiring that going forward. So that decision was made to use partial position management. And just the last thing that I wanted to mention as kind of a fairly major change that you'll see, those of you who are used to dealing with HR and systems, is the job codes are going to be slightly different going forward. We'll use the same job codes for, pretty much the same job codes for SPA, EPA, non-faculty, for SPA, but when it comes to EPA, they will be different. The rank modifier, as we know today, will be combined into a job code, so there will just be one job code for EPA employees going forward that will represent the combination of our current rank and rank modifier. So, one thing that we'll be doing also is bringing in the new salary ranges for the EPA non-faculty, the new structure that's being built for EPA non-faculty. We'll be folding that into Microsoft as well. So you'll see that information not only on the SPA side with the pay bands, but you'll also be seeing some more structure on the EPA side and the compensation side as well. So those are the major points that I wanted to talk with you all about on the HR payroll side of the project. And at this point, Kevin and Matt are going to come back up and do a little bit of a wrap-up, say a final few words, and then we'll have a time period where they can answer any questions.
Okay.
covered a lot of material. And we know that there's going to be a need for you to go back and check some things out, look for some information that we might have talked about, have an opportunity to maybe look at some of the things that are on our website. And so what we've done is we've put together a group of addresses and email addresses and websites for you to be able to gather information that you might need. All this information is in your package of material, but you can see all the things, different things that we talked about today. There are places for you to go and get some additional information. In addition to these sites, we only had 2 times to rehearse this, so. That project website, that's our main site for information that you may need to have and that you may want to take some time to look at. Again, it's important for you to familiarize yourself with as much of the background information that you can, so that when you get into actually training and then implementing the system, you're going to have a head start. We have a newsletter, e-newsletter sign up where you can get information in that way, and then also a email address for questions that you might have.